In 1794, a single page in a London magazine changed the course of modern medicine. The Gentleman's Magazine and Historical Chronicle of London published an account of an Indian bullock cart driver named Cowasjee, whose nose had been cut off by enemies during a war in the Deccan. Cowasjee then traveled to a Maratha barber surgeon in Pune, who took a piece of skin from Cowasjee's own forehead, folded it down over the destroyed nose, stitched it carefully into place, and reconstructed the man's face. British surgeons present at the procedure were stunned. They sketched what they saw. They sent the sketches back to London, and within a few decades, the technique they had witnessed, performed by an Indian craftsman using methods passed down through generations, became the foundation of modern reconstructive plastic surgery. The procedure had a name in Sanskrit. It was over 2,000 years old by the time the British saw it, and it had been written down around 600 BCE by a man named Sushruta. This is the story of the Sushruta Samhita, the 2,500-year-old Indian surgical text whose techniques modern operating rooms still use today. Before going further, a quick honesty note. The Sushruta Samhita, as we have it today, is described by Sanskrit scholars as a work with multiple historical layers. The original core is dated by peer-reviewed studies, including in the PMC archive of the NIH, to around 600 BCE, possibly extending back to 800 BCE. Later sections were added through about the 4th century CE. So when we say Sushruta is 2,500 years old, we mean the foundational surgical knowledge, not necessarily every sentence of the surviving text. The contents of the Sushruta Samhita are extraordinary by any standard. The text is one of the 3 great classical works of Ayurveda, the others being the Charaka Samhita and the Ashtanga Hridaya. The Sushruta Samhita is the surgical text. It belongs to a branch of Ayurveda called Shalya Tantra, the surgical science, one of the 8 branches of classical Ayurvedic medicine. Most peer-reviewed reviews of the text, including in the PMC archive of the U.S. National Library of Medicine, document that Sushruta describes over 300 surgical procedures using 120 different instruments. Many of those instruments, sketched in 19th century editions, look uncannily similar to modern scalpels, forceps, probes, scissors, and catheters. Sushruta's training program for surgeons would still pass inspection at a modern medical school. Students studied for 6 years before they were allowed to operate. They practiced incisions on vegetables, soft fruits, and the cadavers of dead animals. They observed actual procedures on patients before being allowed to perform any themselves. Sushruta was an outspoken advocate of human cadaver dissection, arguing that anatomy could only be truly learned by direct observation of the body. This was happening in writing 2,000 years before European anatomy did the same. Now to the battlefield. War in ancient India was brutal, and Sushruta's text is explicit that surgery was deeply tied to military medicine. The Samhita describes 6 varieties of accidental injuries covering all parts of the body. It classifies wounds by type, depth, location, and cause. It gives detailed protocols for stopping bleeding, including pressure, tourniquets, cauterization, and herbs for clot formation. It describes 60 different upakarma, or supportive treatments for the management of wounds, and it specifies in striking detail what a wounded soldier should and should not eat as he recovers. This is where the text gets quietly revolutionary. The Sushruta Samhita has an entire dietary doctrine for wound healing called Vranapatya, which has been the subject of multiple modern peer-reviewed papers, including a 2017 paper in the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrated Medical Sciences. The recommended diet for a wounded patient is a hot, easy-to-digest gruel called manda, peya, or vilepi, made from old, well-aged rice, mixed with cow's ghee in small quantities and supplemented with meat soup called mamsarasa for protein and bone broth nutrients. Pomegranates and gooseberries fried in ghee are recommended specifically for what we now know to be their vitamin C content, essential for collagen synthesis in healing tissue. Foods to avoid include newly harvested grains, sesame seeds, horse gram, and anything sour, salty, or excessively spicy. The text understood 2.5 millennia ago that what you eat after an injury directly affects the speed and quality of healing. The 3 substances Sushruta used most often for wound dressing were ghee, honey, and turmeric. These 3 were applied directly to open wounds, used in combination, and considered the foundation of Vrana wound healing. Modern medicine has, in the last few decades, run peer-reviewed studies on all 3. Ghee, applied topically, has measurable effects on epithelialization, the regrowing of skin tissue, in chronic and post-surgical wounds. Honey is one of the most studied natural antimicrobials in modern wound care, used in some hospitals for treating infected and slow-healing wounds. Turmeric contains curcumin, which has documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. 3 ingredients, named in Sanskrit around 600 BCE, all validated by modern microbiology and dermatology research. The rhinoplasty technique was the part of Sushruta's work that finally crossed into Western medicine. The procedure he described was nose reconstruction, using a flap of skin from the cheek or forehead, kept attached at one end to maintain blood flow, folded down over the destroyed nose, scarified at the edges, and stitched into place. The blood supply through the attached pedicle allowed the new skin to take root and heal. This is the same procedure modern surgeons called the Indian flap. It was the documented foundation of European plastic surgery after 1794. By the 19th century, surgeons across Europe and America were performing variants of it on burn victims, accident survivors, and wounded soldiers. The same technique, refined but recognizable, that Sushruta described in 600 BCE. The text also contains the world's first detailed protocols for cataract surgery, called couching, using a curved needle to displace a cloudy lens. It describes anesthesia using wine and cannabis. It documents suturing materials, including cotton, hemp, animal sinew, and horsehair. It describes the use of ants with their pinching mandibles as biological sutures for closing intestinal wounds, a technique that survived in some parts of the world until the 20th century. By the 8th century, the Sushruta Samhita had been translated into Arabic as Kitab Shashun al-Hindi, where it influenced Islamic and Persian medicine for centuries. The complete English translation by Kaviraj Kunjalal Bishagratna was published in Calcutta in 1907 in 3 volumes, the version most modern scholars still cite. What the text represents, looked at honestly, is one of the oldest surviving systematic medical traditions in human history, with documented influence on Persian, Arabic, European, and modern global medicine. It is not the only ancient surgical tradition. The Egyptian Edwin Smith papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, contains earlier trauma case studies. Chinese, Greek, and Roman traditions developed their own techniques in parallel. But Sushruta's text is unusually complete, unusually surgical, and unusually focused on the practical realities of treating war wounds, infected tissue, and complicated traumatic injuries. The school of physicians writing under his name was producing what amounts to a battlefield trauma manual at a time when most of the world's wounded soldiers were simply left to die. So tell me below, if you had to choose one ancient medical tradition to treat you after a battlefield injury with no modern hospital available, would you trust Sushruta's honey, ghee, turmeric, rice gruel, and stitched skin flap? Or would you rather take your chances with another ancient medicine system? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more stories about the forgotten science that quietly built the modern world, Subscribe to Alternate Past. The next bandage is already being wrapped.